Hey everyone, JayArr here from Bell of Lost Souls, and today we have a look at Dragonlance Adventures. This is the Dragonlance sourcebook for AD&D. This is the first edition sourcebook by none other than Tracy Hickman and Margaret Wise, who, if you don't know who those two names are, then what are you doing looking at a video about Dragonlance? Dragonlance, though, for those of you who don't know, who are maybe looking to discover what this is, Dragonlance is a series, well, it's a D&D setting, and it's also a series of much beloved fantasy novels that were released back in the 80s. Now, the Dragonlance Chronicles, which is what kind of takes place in here, are the three books that are the Dragons of Autumn Twilight, the Dragons of Winter Night, and the Dragons of Spring Dawning. And these are some of the seminal D&D books for a lot of people. This was a trilogy of novels that was released in the 80s and that laid out such a rich fantasy archetype-filled world for people who are coming of age right alongside Dungeons & Dragons. Now, there's an interesting story about where this all comes from. The Dragonlance Chronicle novels were published because the designer of the world wanted novels to tell the story of the game world that they were designing. And so before the modules that were going to spawn Dragonlance ever were finished, we had the novels and had such rich lore for it. And that's what we're going to take a look at today. So as these books were coming out, the fans were understandably demanding that all of the lore and the source material for the world of Krynn, which is the world of Dragonlance, would be collected into one book, and that's what we have here. So, quick primer, Dragonlance is set in the world of Krynn. There are three kinds of wizards, red, black, and white. There are evil dragons, good dragons, gods, monsters, realms above, realms below. You can find an introduction to it on our website, and we'll include a link in the description of the video here. But basically, Dragonlance is like the big D&D epic fantasy saga. And you can see here, this book has so much iconic stuff coming from it. So, right off the bat, we get three new character option kind of things. We have a new character class, which are the Knights of Solamnia, taken from the book, and they talk about. And in this book, you'll see there are occasional gray books or gray boxes. These are kind of specifically like, okay, you want to run something set in the world of the books. This is how to do it. Knights of Solamnia are featured heavily in the game, and they give you a brand new character class, the Crown Knight, which has its own minimum scores required. It has its own advancement table. It has its own name level and follower table. You can also be a Knight of the Sword, a Knight of the Rose. Knights of the Sword get access to spells. These are kind of pseudo or proto-paladins. The Knights of the Rose are more like, I want to say these guys are more like monks or knight rogue kind of things. They're the gallant knights that get out there and fight. So that's three new fighting type classes for D&D in this source book alone. Then also, this might be a controversial subject, but also introduced in this book are gnomes, but they're the Tinker Gnomes. So if you have someone in your gaming circle who hates gnomes, odds are very good that the reason that happens is because of Dragonlance, because the Tinker Gnomes are very much that archetype of constantly experimenting for better and worse, and most often worse. There's the Tinker class, which is a sort of proto-artificer, which we should be looking forward to in a week here or so. And it gives gnomes specifically an option for building technological devices, and as we'll see when we get through the rules, there's a table for results, which very few are the devices successful, and many are it explodes. And they add sort of a humorous touch to the game that a lot of people find kind of out of balance or out of focus with the others. Dragonlance has some super serious arch characters, and then you have things like the Gnome Flinger, which throws gnomes, the Flappistry, which is sort of a wearable cape that you can parachute with, the Whoosh Wagon, a self-propelled wagon, and then we get into the Wizards of High Sorcery. There are 3 moons in Dragonlance. This is a sort of canonical thing. There's the Solinari, Nuitari, and Lunitari. These might be very familiar names to you guys. They each kind of are influenced with the three towers of sorcery, which is good, evil, and neutral. White, red, and black. They all have their own special cool classes here. If you want to play a white robe wizard, you need to be a level 3 wizard first, and then you can progress as a white, black, or red robed wizard. You can also play, and this I like this one a lot because you don't really see that too much, but this is I think a really fun way to play the campaign. You could play a renegade wizard and kind of go your own way. It also talks a lot about the gods of the world. You might recognize some of these characters: Texas, Morgion, Chemosh. All of these figures come from the book, from the novels, and this setting book does such a great job of bringing the novels to life in D&D. For better and sometimes for worse. If you have people that hate gnomes, they probably also hate Kenders. They're like basically very childlike thieving hobbits, basically. They are almost compulsively kleptomaniacal. They seem very jovial and can often lead players to steal things from other party members, and that never leaves a good taste in the mouth. But they have rules for playing them here, and they talk about how your pockets might be filled with all manner of harmless or rare items that you just sort of picked up along the way. The elves of Dragonlance, of course, have their own special rules. Everything has its own flavor in here. I could spend an hour taking you through this book, but I don't know that anyone wants to do that. Suffice it to say, you get all the flavors of the basic D&D races. You get all the unique races of Kryn, things like Draconians, which feature heavily in the War of the Lance. And you can see here the big variety of them. You get a write-up on like good dragons and how they fit into the world. You get these special rules for dragons in Kryn. They have guidelines for how to play them, for how they fight, for getting the personalities that are present in the novels. You get what's a fantasy book without a map? And then you get like a timeline, a chronology of everything from, the mystical age of dreams when the world is created to the end of the books. And this book came out in 1987, so it came out after the last novels were published. There's a collection of NPCs, magic items, and other cool stuff. I just want to point out one of the magic items because this is called the Dragonlance Saga, so let's talk about the Dragonlance. This is here. Dragonlances are artifacts that were first created at the end of the early Dragon Wars and used to defeat evil dragons. These are special weapons that are magically forged and require a lot of power and effort to make, and they are capable of killing dragons. Now, in the game, you need, or in the novels, you needed 2 artifacts to make them. You needed the Silver Arm and the Hammer of Karas. You can forge them with only one of them and get like a +2 bonus to hit and +2 damage. If you got them both, you get +4 to hit and damage, along with all of the other stuff. So there are a number of different kinds of Dragonlance. There's the Footman's Dragonlance, which is an 8-foot-long spear that does a d8 points of damage against larger than man-sized damage, and if you stab a dragon, it inflicts damage equal to your hit points. So if you are a fighter and you've got 45 hit points, you're dealing 45 hit points to that guy. And this is back in 1st edition when that was a sizable chunk of change. And the mounted Dragonlance, of course, does even more damage than that. A mount, you would often be wielded from the back of a dragon, because Dragonlance. You would deal the hit points of your rider and the dragon mount that you're riding on atop, in addition to the normal bonus to hit and damage. So, if you want to take something like that and represent it in the game, that's honestly a really cool way of doing it. There's a lot of stuff in this book because there's a lot of stuff in Dragonlance. If you want to run a game set in this world, this is the way to do it. This is gonna take you through it. If you never read the novels and want to find like an interesting sort of different old school flavor of fantasy world. This is it. It's very different from the Forgotten Realms. It's very different from Greyhawk. It's its own sort of unique creation. There's a flavor of Dragonlance that's sort of this like weirdly dark but still high fantasy. It's not really gruesome or grim or brutal. It's just sort of emotionally dark. There's a lot of betrayal, a lot of trusts and evil characters that you're rooting for. They're sort of the heroes, the protagonists of the stories, but they're evil. It's an interesting, meaty, role-playing, rich setting to dive into, and if you are looking for a way to do it, Dragonlance Adventures is the way to go. Well, I'm JayArr from Bell of Lost Souls. Thanks for watching.
Click to subscribe. Check out more videos. And thanks for watching.